I know that there's a very busy program on each day for everyone, and you're balancing your time. So we'll go live, Mike. We're beaming this. So welcome to those joining from around the world, joining us at COP28. We're at the Global Cement and Concrete Association Pavilion, Building 88, but less relevant to you, but more relevant to you for getting here successfully. Well done for finding your way around COP. So we've got a whole series of events this week. We're delighted to have, you can see on the screen on your left, partners who have helped us put on this pavilion to enable us to put on 18 events during COP to talk about all the different aspects of decarbonising our sector. And we're delighted today to be focusing on how we're going from the global commitments to local action, to be able to speak about what's happening in Thailand and India and Latin America. So delighted to have a range of speakers who are going to present on that. We've got Sanjay, Seth here, who's going to talk about India, Maria Garcia, who's going to talk about Latin America, and my CEO is going to hot-foot it from another event and talk about Thailand shortly. But before he does, I just want to quickly give you an overview and a reminder of what the Global Cement and Concrete Association's roadmap is. I said yesterday in an event that everyone's got a roadmap to net zero. So what's so special about this? I mean, you know, it's sort of it's a pathway to net zero, but what's exciting about this actually is that the members of GCCA have committed to this. That's what's exciting about this. So the members on the wall there, over 44 members now, and Winston's coming in now representing Heidelberg Materials. We've got Pacas Mayo from Peru represented here. Your CEO is committed to this roadmap. We were going to launch at the beginning of October, the beginning of 2021. The CEOs took it so seriously that they really wanted to understand it in detail, and we didn't get it approved until the September. That's how seriously they took it. So it means something. So there's different levers on this, but and it's an aggregation of what's happened globally to develop it up into a global roadmap. But what's important is to recognize that at national level there are particular challenges and particular opportunities that need to be explored, and we need to apply the roadmap at those levels. So we've got something which we call the Net Zero Accelerator Scheme, where we've got where we're acting as a catalyst to help countries develop their own roadmaps using the same language, the same methodology, same definitions. So there's consistency in how we use the language, so that when we're talking to governments and when we're talking to global organizations, when they hear something from the Thailand roadmap and they hear something from the Brazilian roadmap, it's in the same language. So you've probably started to look ahead already. The greener roadmaps that are already published. Some of those roadmaps were published before we did ours. So Europe would have been one of those. Sem Bureau, our partner in Europe. The Portland Cement Association in the US, they launched their roadmap on the same day that we launched ours, and we collaborated in that process. The Canadians and the Australians were well underway on theirs, and theirs has followed the methodology that GCA has developed and was refined by ECRA, European Cement Research Academy, with whom we worked extremely closely on the global roadmap, and they've remained as really valuable partners in the process of validating national roadmaps, so that we know that the national cement and concrete roadmaps are using the same language and the same definitions and the same, that the numerics from one can be trusted when you compare them with the numerics of another. So we launched it in just after we launched the global roadmap in October 2021. In March 22, we initiated this scheme to try and accelerate national roadmaps. We did it with 4 countries, Thailand, India, Egypt, and Brazil. And delighted that Thailand was able to launch the findings of their roadmap at COP last year in Egypt, and the actual detailed publication has just been made available in the last week or two. I think I've got the address down here. So it's thaicma.or.th, thaicma.or.th. Really well produced. Ignore the content for a minute. Just really well produced document. from within that document, the front cover on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, they've got these three rings, which are really the components of what we're looking to see from national roadmaps. So there's that little roadmap icon you can see in the top. So it's the roadmap together, which is the roadmap is the technology pathway together with policies. So it's the technology pathway and the policy. So once again, those things can be done at a global level, but when you get down into the national level, that's obviously where policies are made at national level, and there are particular opportunities and issues that, you know, maybe even in the panel discussion today we'll discuss about the different aspects of policy that are particular to a country. And then the left-hand side of the ring is actually having an action agenda on the policies. So being able to say an action on real projects. And then on the right-hand side is to engage the CEOs. So the process is to engage the CEOs at a national level, so that as we did at a global level, as I started talking about this, at a global level we had the global CEOs committed. At a national level we need the CEOs taking a lead there, so that it's not just a paper exercise that ends up on the shelf, but it actually gets delivered in reality. And what they've been able to do in Thailand in terms of delivering reality, one of the levers is on blended cement, so taking the CO2, the high CO2 impact clinker, and being able to add supplementary cementitious materials to that to blend the cement to be able to lower the CO2 content of the cement. In Thailand, they've been able to collaborate with the Thai government and with the Thai government's own procurement to reduce the CO2 content of the cement by using these blended cements and bringing those in and essentially mandating their use. And that's been a very effective way that they've been able to get action already, not even today, you know, last year, and progressively they're going to make those CO2 savings. The other thing interesting that they've been able to do in Thailand is this thing called the Saraburi Sandbox. And one of my colleagues is just going to hold up, Catherine, if you can just hold up the progress report. So as you leave, do pick up one of these documents, which Catherine's holding up. It's the progress report. So there's details from almost all of our members of real action they've made. And the Saraburi Sandbox, not only is it written up in their roadmap document, but we've got a half a page of it in that progress report. This is interesting because in Thailand, the limestone is predominantly in one area. Limestone is the major source material for cement production. So that's most of the cement production, therefore, is in this region of Thailand. And so what they've identified is that all the things that can be done to reduce the carbon footprint of the cement production are being tested out in this area called Saraburi, where most of the cement production is in Thailand, about 80% of cement production. So I've mentioned the blended cement, so it's making sure they get access to the fly ash, access to the GGBS that's available, and they're doing it. They're sort of doing it on. They're doing it as far as they can do it. They're maximizing it. So that's one of them. The next one is access to waste. So rather than using fossil fuels to fire the kiln and get to the temperatures required, you use municipal waste. So in this city of Saraburi, they're channeling all their efforts on the waste to get the waste directed into the cement kilns. And similarly, there's other examples through the whole roadmap process which they're being able to do there. And they're referring to it as a sandbox. I think people are probably familiar with that term as a sandbox. A sandbox is where you can play with things and see how they work. And so they're using this whole city, the Saraburi sandbox, to see how this works for actually not just one cement kiln, but I think it's 80% of their production, which is an extraordinary amount. So that's the Thailand roadmap, a great example of the cement industry, the concrete industry, and the government coming together to develop this roadmap collectively, so that the technology pathway and the policies that are required to enable that technology pathway to be followed are all being developed by the right stakeholders at the right place. So that was one example. We had the Egypt roadmap was a second one where it's been produced. It hasn't been published as yet. The Brazilian roadmap is being completed and soon to be published. Similar with Colombia, and the fourth of the ones that we launched was India. And similarly, Indian roadmap basically has been completed, but to try and maximize the buy-in from the industry and from government, it's yet to be published. But many of the findings are there. Delighted to welcome up Sanjay, Seth to the platform. The consultants that are being used by GCCA India, which represent 80% of the producers in the Indian market, is Terry. And Sanjay, would you give a little introduction to that research institute that's doing a whole spectrum of different things, one of which is acting as the expert consultants to develop the roadmap for GCA India. So Sanjay, if I can introduce you, welcome you to the floor, and to present here. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, and a very good afternoon to all my panelists and the audience. Uh, I thought that we would probably get into a question and answer session straight, but I have a couple of slides. Maybe we can very quickly run through them, and just some fancy pictures that you see. Of course, this is one of our favorite slides that we all are used to, seeing how you know, cement, concrete, steel are some things that are going to be the mainstay, especially in a country like ours where bulk of our infrastructure is yet to be put in place. We are going to be, there's a huge amount of construction that is there, which is there going on currently, and we will continue to be using up a lot of concrete and steel. But the issue is, how can we kind of go on a pathway which is much more flatter, so that both the operational as well as the embodied energies go down, and both in, when I'm talking of the production as well as and when the buildings, in the use of buildings. So there are frameworks of the Government of India which have specified certain mandatory requirements. For example, if I may, okay, these are slides which I'll probably not speak on, but I'll come straight to the point. The issue is that while there is going to be so much of an pressure, so the government has initiated many efforts or many programs where there is that, in case realizing that there is abundance of fly ash which is available in our country, because we are still going to be dependent on fossil fuels as far as our electricity requirements is concerned, despite the the humongous amount of renewable that is going to be added on into the grid. I think we are one of the largest countries to have committed our generation through the renewables, but still to be dependent on fossil fuels, which throws up the issue of where does the fly ash that is developed in the process get used. So the cement companies have been urged that they need to increase their the amount of fly ash that is used in the productions to the extent of up to, I think somewhere it's specified about 35%, because beyond that issues of safety and all of those things come in. But the point is that there is a regulation that within 300 kilometers of any thermal power plant, you need to ensure that cement companies, if there are brick manufacturers, all of them need to use the fly ash that is available to them from these thermal power plants. I think efforts like these help us in making sure that we get onto a trajectory where we bring down our emissions. Okay, so that's the point that I would like to make. So that's number one. Number two, there have also been the use of the blast furnace slag. I think all of that has been also been so all those the requirements have been enunciated by the various ministries. Say for example, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, they've already brought in that there are standards which need to comply with, that every cement company. So all of these things are in place. And one of the things that it's interesting to note that while in other countries probably the fly ash usage has come down over a period of time, in our case it continues to remain even up to 2050 much at the same levels, and that's the reality. And of course, the use of this SCMs is something which will continue to grow as we move ahead, and the emissions from the because as a result of which the emissions are going to be are going to be reducing from the use of these SCMs, including through calcine clays to the percent of about 6% in 2030, and they'll continue to double by 2050. There have been now that I think earlier on this year in October, our Honorable Prime Minister, he's launched a green credits program, and the construction industry is again going to be is one of the sectors which has been linked with the green credit programs in a big way. So it's a carrot and stick cap and trade mechanism where you eventually because of the sustainable materials or the sustainability efforts or the low carbon that goes into the manufacturing of any building material gets a green credit, which eventually could be traded off through a cap and trade mechanism. So that is there. And finally, I think I would want to tell you all that the partnership, I think it's the collaborative effort between industry, between government, between academia, between the manufacturers, and also think tanks like ours, research bodies. All of us work together in a very, very constructive manner to make sure that as we continue to build our infrastructure and bulk of it which is going to be put in place in the next, say, up to 2047, 2050, we need to make sure that we don't go on a pathway which is very carbon intensive. Thank you very much.
Sanjay, thank you so much for that India perspective, and we'll come back and ask you some questions as we come to a panel. So if you stay there for the moment for then Maria. So Maria Garcia, Executive Director of the Inter-American Cement Federation, or FICEM is a bit easier. So what does FICEM do? They cover a huge number of countries. How many? 26 countries. So we're talking about country roadmaps, and here's Maria and Ricardo, who does a huge amount of number crunching, responsible for 26 countries. So your role is to facilitate many of these countries doing what they do. Is you've been collecting data, analyzing data, providing data to them for, I was going to say decades. Is that over the decades? Exactly. And so therefore, and you've already been doing roadmaps in the past, but now with the roadmap is at a more ambitious level to get to net zero by 2050. So, Maria, over to you. And I've given you this general slide to start with if you want, and then your slide.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is a really important moment to make people to understand exactly the world, what the industry is doing. Really important to spread the job everybody is doing. Okay, basically I'm here representing the oil industry for Latin America, 26 countries, 200 million tons for 600 million inhabitants. Really important. Basically, the industry started doing the roadmaps in 2015, and we did 12 roadmaps representing 90% of the production, but at that time was based only including cement and 2 degrees. When when GCCA get in contact with FICEM and offer us to be part of this big initiative and tell us if we can be the accelerator for Latin America, that was in 2021. At that moment, we understand that that was basically the goal. All the industry is committed with the carbon neutrality, everyone. What FICEM is doing is exactly what Andrew said. We align the industry and we lead the roadmap in every country. One of the main difficulties we have is also that not only there are too many countries, but also that we have 26 parliaments. So that is one of the main difficulties. But one thing that I see that is really important with this roadmap of GCCA is basically 2 things. One, that is making us think in a holistic way. Now we have to think not only in the cement, we have to think in the cement, in the concrete, and the construction. And also not only to think in a short term, maybe in a long term, but with actions in the short term. So now is the decade for actions. We have to start showing the world that we are capable to do it. And also that this is possible and is effective. But then we start in 2021 leading this roadmap. Right now we have two specific roadmaps in Colombia and in Chile. What we did basically was to take the umbrella of the roadmap that GCCA did and take it to the region and put it in the countries. And because of the big gap that we have in different countries, the different speed, we decided that we have to analyze exactly what were the same. We are working with the same levers, but at different speed and different emphasis. We work with the same leverage. If you don't mind, can he put the, or me? No, this? Which one? Perfect, okay. Here you can see exactly what is happening in Latin America. In the next years, with the projection to 2050, the demand is going to increase 70%. So we are going to increase in the production and in the emissions of CO2. Here in the blue, you see exactly the percentage that GCC is expecting in the global roadmap. And here in the white is exactly the percentages that Latin America can commit. At the end, we are going to have to be net zero, but with different emphasis in each lever and different speed. In the first one, we understand that we have to be more efficient in the construction and in the use of the material. GCCA has 33% in that level. We have 20%. The reason is mainly because two aspects. The first one, Latin America is not an industrialized continent. Most of the product is delivered by bags, and it's going to take time for us to change that situation. So we can be more effective, or we can improve the delivery on bags, but not as became an industrialized in short term. So if you see, we are going to do an important effort. We are going to go from 64 to 40%. That is going to be an incredible effort. But we are informal, and also the problem we have is that most of the consumption is used by people that don't have education, and also they are not using in the perfect way the material. So it's a lot of desperdicio. I don't remember the word. The second leverage that we see there that is important for us is the alternative fuels. The expectation is basically 11%. We are going to go from 8% right now to 40%. So the effort for us to use the waste in co-processing is really important. Right now, the average in Latin America is only 10%, while in Europe is 40% is the average. In Europe, we see plants plants that are substitute the co-processing or the combustibles fossils for alternative fuels by 80–90% sometimes. In our case, it's never 10%, more than 10%. And the last one will be the CCUS. In Latin America, we are not seeing any pilot because we don't have the government support and we don't have the resources. So basically, we are talking about a fair transition that for 2030 or until the CCUS is in Latin America in the right price and in the right time, we are going to use some possibilities like use the methane and also the natural base solution. In the moment that the CCUS is in Latin America, of course, we are going to be net zero using that leverage. Right now, the hydrogen is using in a small percentage, maybe 1%, in some companies, improving the potential of the waste, but it's just like a pilot. So the important thing here is that we are under the umbrella of GCCA. We commit, all the industry is working on that, and but we have to use different ways to approach or to complete the process to be carbon neutral. That's it.
Sanjay, if I can invite you up. And we've got a microphone to give to our panelists somewhere that I'll find. And you can be thinking of the first question that you might have. Who's got the first question for Maria or for Sanjay? It's actually, has anyone else done the sums? 600 million people, 1.4 billion people, 2 billion people. So if you're online, you're joining a really important event here. People representing cement production for 2 billion people are on stage. It's a little bit mind-blowing, actually, when you think of it like that. Anyone got a question? My first question? Okay, Maria. So you represent 26 different countries. You've made the point about you got 26 different parliaments. Do you just want to give us a little bit of an insight how you help the producers and the associations in each of those countries manage their policy negotiations to try and help this happen?
Okay, the first challenge was to have a roadmap. When we talked with the International Energy Agency and asked for help, they told us that will be impossible to do a roadmap in Latin America. Impossible. They say we don't want to be part of that challenge. Finally, we decided that the way to do it was going country by country, understand the needs, the challenges, and the opportunities, and has been like this. That way, we complete 12 roadmaps to cement 1.5 degrees. After that, we decide now we have to upgrade those roadmaps to concrete and taking in consideration construction to 2 degrees. At that point, we say we have to do 2 pilots so the Latin American industry can see what happened if we work with one specific country trying to get the carbon neutrality. And we start working with Colombia and Chile. Completely different situation, completely different. Each country is completely, it's like we are handling 26 different roadmaps. It's a big, big challenge. After we did Colombia and Chile, working with the governments, the industry and the governments to understand the needs, the challenges and the opportunities, we were able to do the roadmap. And right now, those 2 roadmaps are exactly aligned, governments and industry, with the roadmap you just saw. Are different, the percentage are different, but it's basically the same leverage and the same goals. And normally, what we do is we work with the governments in the process. That doesn't mean we have the law we need or the policy we need, but at least they understand that the industry is committed, is working, and they understand what kind of policies we need. But it's challenging.
Perfect. If you just pass the microphone over to Sanjay. So Sanjay, in terms of that negotiation between industry and government, can you just give us a little bit of insight? Because Terry, beyond the roadmap work we'll be doing, more generally, you do quite a lot of that policy type work. Can you give us some sort of insight into that dynamic between Indian government and industry?
Yeah, so I think if you really look at the overarching framework is, I mean, it's set by the government that they say that we need to be a carbon or a carbon neutral economy by 2070. So that was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister. Now, if you want to do that, I think every sector needs to play a role in order to achieve that, right? It cannot happen just overnight, or it cannot happen through magic. It requires every sector to speak. Now, while the every industry or every if they are all encouraged to kind of draw, you want to use the word roadmaps, or you want to use something else, some term, I think that's fine. But essentially, they need to define a trajectory or a pathway as to how they are really going to achieve that. And then in the process, it becomes important for agencies such as TERI, which are research and academia or research, to provide them with innovative solutions for sustainability. To how do you make sure that you work and this will eventually happen. It requires a lot of research to back it up and to give them the confidence that, okay, if you do this and adopt a certain technology, probably you would be able to achieve it. Likewise, even in the policy frameworks, what one is that we work as the back-end engines of the government to make sure that if there is a policy which is announced by the government, it should be doable, it should be implementable. And in order to tell them that, okay, this is something, so we are used as a sounding board to make sure that, okay, if we go ahead with such an announcement, and then they define it and they say, let's go ahead and push the industry to make sure that they are able to deliver. And we are very fortunate. And if you, some years back, I remember that we had the Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme, the cap and trade scheme for energy efficiency in the energy intensive industries. And cement was one, aluminium, steel, all of them were very energy intensive industries. So each industry was given a target to achieve, and then the plants which achieved the target would get some certificates, and the ones that did not achieve would be able to trade them in order to meet their obligations. So those kind of business models have been put in place to ensure that the industry also pushes itself to achieve higher goals, to align itself with the government's announcements. That's the thing. So partnerships, I think that is very key, and stakeholder engagement is very important, and we do all of that while coming up with such roadmaps.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Sanjay. If I just expand on that and come back to you, Maria, just one of the reasons why the roadmaps aren't just to the gate of the cement plant, but are through the concrete manufacture stage and through the construction stage, is to ensure that more stakeholders recognize that they've got a role to play. I think something that's common in much of the emerging economies, you're representing 2 billion people, Africa would be the other one to add in there, is the informal construction side. How, in expanding the roadmap beyond the cement gate all the way through, you've got the informal, you mentioned the decrease in the use of bag cement, sacks, I think 60% down to 40% was the ambition. How are you going to engage with those stakeholders? How are you already engaging with those stakeholders to help that informal structure come on board and be part of this process?
We start with alliances. We have an alliance with the Latin American Concrete and the Latin American Construction Federations, both. But we have to start making them understand the commitment each one has, because only the cement industry cannot achieve this goal. With the concrete, we don't have that much problem, because finally it's like a brother. But with the construction, they are far away to understand what is going on with this commitment. We think that if we have the right codes and standards, that will help. That is a main part to be able to make the construction to do the right thing. But that part is a little bit challenging.
Yeah, and so even with the right codes and standards, and earlier on today we heard from the American Concrete Institute, and they've got a new standard on low carbon, and we know that the ASTM on the materials side is a standard that you guys use a lot in Latin America. That doesn't wholly address the informal structure, the
No.
informal construction sector, which is
It's an
it's a big challenge. That
Big challenge.
Yeah.
We have to educate the users, the
Yeah.
people that use the product. And it's not an easy thing.
I'm very keen to involve you, people who've been around COP all day, all yesterday. You must have questions that are burning. Walter, I'll bring down the microphone to you.
Thank you. I think it's great that these local roadmaps exist, and especially that there is a sync up with policy and local industry. I think that's great. My question now is, going forward, what is your role, or how do you intend to make it happen, right? So that, because this has to result in projects all across the value chain, and so how do you go about accelerating that or initiating that?
First step, make all the countries to have the roadmap. Second step will be to have the exactly what the GCCA said. We need the financials to do the investigation. We need the policies to make it happen. And we need the authorities to really engage with this commitment. Without the governments and the investment for the financial side and the right investigation for the position papers to support some topics, is not gonna be difficult to accelerate. But we think that we are in the right path.
Yeah, I think, you know, we need to and you use the right word, the value chain. That's very important. How do you kind of empower the entire value chain to take those decisions? And that can happen only if you provide enough information out in the open source for the confidence for the people to be there in this. And then put in enough business models for it to work. For example, all of this is going to be actually used up by the developers and the construction industry. How do they find value in, because they'll need to ask, what is it there for me, right? So and then on the other hand, so both the top down as well as the bottoms up is something which is very important. Use the consumers to start, say for example, green infrastructure, right? If you are going to tell them to demand for green, then the developers will be required to deliver green, and that'll, and if so they always say that there is an incremental cost to go green, but if you are able, if the government is going to, so what they do is that, okay, if you do green, we give you an additional FSI, because it's value for, they get additional money. If they sell space, they get additional money for going green. Now, if they go on that pathway, then somebody needs to certify. Who are those certifying agencies? Such as us, the GRIA, right? So the Green Rating for Integrated Habitat Assessment is a rating agency which certifies buildings for green and resource efficiency. So when we certify them, then the government gives the developer an additional FSI based on our certification, and then that kind of triggers them to make sure that, you know, it goes. So all of this, I think the value chain needs to, we need to make sure that this value chain works very well. It needs to be like a well-oiled machinery, it needs to work. And I think once you do that, and the confidence in the end user, and I have always been saying this, that the end user is one of the most important elements. We cannot ignore them, because they are the people who really need to demand for it, and then the suppliers will be able to deliver on it. You know, the demand and supply needs to talk to each other.
And so just on that theme, I think we'll probably run out of time for any further questions, but if you're not aware, the IDDI made an announcement yesterday in terms of low carbon procurement, in terms of cement and concrete and steel, where countries have committed to be part of that initiative. That's really important because public procurement draws in steel and cement in significant percentages, and the mechanism by which that procurement works will flow through to the private sector as well. There are the voluntary assessment schemes, GRIA in India, other assessment schemes. If you're still at COP on the 9th of December, we've got an event here which is looking at the different assessment schemes, voluntary schemes, and how they can play their role in the pull through of low carbon project to give confidence to suppliers to develop the low carbon solutions. So that's all part of the story as well. So for those online, you're going to join with the people here in thanking our speakers today at this event. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.